What's up, everybody? It's Daniel here with Roar United. Today we are sitting down with somebody that I am personally so excited to be here with. He is an entrepreneur, a business owner, a great man of God, a pastor, a preacher. He just does it all, and most importantly, he is my father in the faith. So we're sitting down with Mr. Tim Olivarez today, and we'll be right back after this intro. So, like I said, really happy to have you here. This for me is like when I kind of look down the list of everybody that we were trying to set up interviews with, yours was the one that I was most excited for. When I brought up the idea of having people on to come talk to us, to the guys, I think every single one of them just about at the same time was like, we need to get Tim in.
Sure.
So this is something that they're all super excited for as well.
Well, I would just like to say, it's an honor to be here. I think just what God's done in the last year, how he's crossed our path, is something special. So I'm just honored to be able to sit here and hopefully just encourage, edify, have some open conversation, but just have fun with you, just like we always do.
Absolutely. And it's an absolute honor to have you here. Like you were saying, with us, with our lives crossing paths and what I've seen God do just in my life and the fruit of that, I've been so incredibly blessed by it. And as a matter of fact, this podcast is very much a fruit of sitting under you and
Sure.
you pouring into me and everything. So if we could just kind of get started with how you really encountered God.
Ooh.
Because I know there's a rich lore there.
Absolutely. So, let me take you back a little bit. So just kind of give you some history. Born and raised in Washington State, a small town in Mount Vernon. Had two amazing parents. Grew up in an Assemblies of God church. And the story kind of goes that there was a prophetic word in our church one night that there would be a Timothy born of our church and that he would preach to the nations. So obviously that word goes forth, and I don't think my parents thought anything of it. There was actually supposed to be a child born before me, but my mom had a miscarriage, and so they try again, and here I come. And so I'm kind of born into this. They didn't know what to name me, and my mom is in the hospital, and she has a dream. And the Lord comes to her and says, I want you to name this child Timothy. And so that's kind of how I got my name. It happens to also be my father's two favorite apostles in the Bible. So my name is Timothy Paul. And so that's kind of where it starts. And right away, my grandmas, who were single at the time, and one was getting remarried, I kind of just got engulfed into full presence, into full manifestations growing up as a kid. So I remember being Hispanic, we'd go up into Canada and we'd go into late revivals, and I remember seeing amazing healings. People walk out of wheelchairs, get up and walk. Deaf people get their hearing, blind eyes opened. And so right away, just kind of engulfed into what God can still do for us today. And so grew up in that. I grew up doing something called Royal Rangers, which is the Assemblies of God kind of version of Boy Scouts. And so my dad was military, had to learn how to survive, learn how to be just kind of a jack of all trades, master of none. And so, that's a little bit of my childhood. Fast forward into high school, there's a pivotal point in my life where my dad re-enlists into the National Guard, so we weren't worried about it, right? And then 9/11 comes, and all of a sudden, things get a little more serious.
Yeah.
So he gets called up to active duty, which was the first time, I think, in over like 60 years that this brigade gets called up to active duty.
Wow.
And so he starts to have to train. And we kind of know what's coming, but just don't know how to handle it, right? And here's a pivotal time where I'm going from middle school to high school and needing a father.
Yeah.
Things are changing, and I'm starting to see him gone. So sure enough, they get called, and he does a tour to Iraq, and I kind of get left with the man of the house. So I have an older sister and a younger brother, and my brother is 6 years younger than me, so there's a pretty big gap.
Yeah.
And so just kind of having to work on the side, take care of my mom, just hold down the fort while dad's gone, and really just kind of get pushed into that leadership role. So he comes back, and I begin to see alcohol introduced. And so again, remember, I grew up in church. I'd seen everything under the sun, right? And all of a sudden, I see alcohol and kind of think nothing of it. Well, one thing leads to another, just like anything, right? And pretty soon, I'm seeing my parents kind of like get engulfed into a party scene. And I start thinking, okay, well, if that's okay, we stop going to church. Maybe it's an outlet. Maybe it's a way that I can deal with what I'm going through. And I fall pretty heavily. The only good saving grace about me and my story is I don't have a real addictive personality. But what I think began to develop is this ability to be somebody in certain areas of my life.
Yeah.
So I love sports. So Friday was game time, play football, immediately get on the bus, and it was like, all right, where's the party?
Yeah.
So I knew how to get drugs, alcohol, you name it. I was kind of the go-to guy. And it's like, where are we going? What are we doing? And so that just kind of became my lifestyle. My wife, we met each other super young. We grew up in daycare. I asked her father if I could date her in 6th grade. And so we had dated up until my freshman year. We broke up for a year and then got back together. And so she's been my ride or die. She's been the steady rock in my life for all those years and has seen everything that I've taken her through. So there's a lot there. But so I guess to share all that, all of a sudden in 2019, I just kind of get this weird shift of like, this is not all that my life can be. So me and Lindsay get married, we have kids young, and I just go into full work mode. And I feel the Lord just begin to like tug on my heart again. So all those years kind of separate. Sure, I'd still go around church. I knew the faith. I could quote scripture. I believed I was going to heaven, but never understood personally the relationship side. And so in 2019, I just began to pray this prayer of, Lord, give me time. I need you to redeem time first with my kids. And so when 2020 came and COVID hit, I really believe that was an answer to my prayer. It was God just being able to stop everything and get my attention.
Yeah.
And so sure enough, I stopped work for about 2 weeks. And then that is when I encountered God. I remember, and Lindsay tells the story probably better because she got to witness it from an outside perspective, but I felt like I did not move from our couch to our table for those 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I was on my face just crying out to the Lord and beginning to pursue all that he had for me. New revelation, just new dimensions of his love and of his grace. And he just rocked my world. So one day I'm praying and I hear him whisper in my ear, Tennessee. And I'm thinking, all right, Lord, what's in Tennessee? And so I approached Lindsay very subtly and I said, hey, what do you think about moving? So of course I'm a builder. I do construction. She knew I wanted to build my house. We were kind of getting to that. We had just bought our first house, plenty of equity. Things are doing, making plenty of money. Things are going great. And she's like, yeah, where do you want to move? Like, you want to build our house? And I'm like, no, what do you think about moving to Tennessee? And she's like, no way. No way.
I can hear that like in her voice
Right?
too. Absolutely.
And so I'm like, okay. I thought I was crazy because if anybody knows Lindsay, I think what he's trying to say is Lindsay was not very subtle. She was like, no.
Yeah.
And she's like, you're crazy. Go talk to God. Come back when you're ready to have a conversation. And so, yeah, I was like, all right, Lord. So instead of getting, totally off track, I just said, Lord, you know the plans and the purpose.
Yeah.
You know what you ultimately want to do. Soften her heart and reveal whatever you need to in her. And so one crazy thing about our marriage is, through me asking for time, it's because there was, in our early years of marriage, 2 people just coexisting.
Yeah.
I got really good at working, and she was a phenomenal mother who could take care of the house, have great order, and really just serve me to whatever capacity I asked. And so I would literally get up, go to work, and sure, I was working 12 to 14 hours a day.
Yeah.
I'd come home, dinner would be ready, I would eat, hang out, go to bed. I never changed a diaper. I never really interacted with our kids. Very absent in being present as a father and as a husband. And so I just said, Lord, I know there's a lot that I need to work through. I know there's been a lot of trust broken, but whatever you have for us in this next season, just know that you have all of me. And so, yeah, it wasn't some crazy encounter with God, but yet for me, it was the most real thing and the most purposeful thing I'd ever experienced. So a couple months go by, and Lindsay's grandma by marriage and a very close, dear woman of faith in my life passes away. And I remember walking with our kids through what it means to like war for people and how to pray for people, knowing that, God, whatever your will is, let it just be done. One day we got kind of a dream to be like Jericho, and we circled the hospital 7 times, just praying, just shouting, because they wouldn't allow us in with COVID. And so to see our little faith activate the whole family and kind of reunite them on this woman of faith who had held this family together was pretty amazing. And so I think this whole time God's dealing with Lindsay, and sure enough, she comes back and she's like, okay, I'm ready to have a conversation. What do you mean, Tennessee? What is God actually showing you? And from there, it was kind of like, I don't know. I felt like we were in an Abraham moment of like, start walking that way.
Yeah.
And so we prayed. I remember for the first time in our marriage, really coming together and praying together, and establishing things in the right order. And so we began to pray and just say, all right, Lord, what do you have? And what does this really mean? So her cousin was supposed to get married that year. And because of COVID, they decided to cancel the wedding.
Right.
And so 2021's coming around the corner, and the airlines call Lindsay one day and they say, hey, you need to use this airfare by this amount of time. And so Lindsay's like, okay, give me some details. And like, we'd bought our tickets very cheap. And Lindsay's like, how much money do we have? And she throws out some ridiculous money of like, you have like $2,500. And Lindsay's like, hold on, like that wasn't what the ticket cost. I used one of our companion fares through our credit card. So like, what's going on here? And the lady's like, look, I don't know. This is what you have. You need to use this. So she's like, hold please. And she calls me and she says, hey, we have this money. We can fly into Nashville to go check out Tennessee. Do you want to? I said, absolutely. So she books that. And the lady's like, hey, you still got this amount of money left. And so family was kind of scarce for us out in Washington. My family had moved to Texas. And so without kind of allowing people to know what's going on, she calls my sister and says, hey, we can pay for you to come watch the kids. Would you be willing to? My sister says yes. So she books a flight for my sister from Texas to Washington. And so the trip is now planned. And 3 days before we're about to leave, I hear the Lord whisper to me again, if you're going to go out there, make it worth your while. And I'm saying, okay, well, what does that mean? Yeah. He says, find a job. And so one night I just sit down at my computer and I literally Google construction companies in Tennessee. And J&S Construction pops up at the top of the list. And so the only thing I knew of Cookeville was CrossFit Mayhem. So I didn't know of Cookeville because this is the mecca, with Rich Froning being here, of CrossFit. We had trained CrossFit. So I knew, obviously everybody knows Nashville, and I did know, strangely enough, of a small town in Cookeville. So as I Google, this company comes up and it's in Cookeville. So I'm like, what? Okay. And so I start reading about them, and this is an amazing faith-based company that is all about serving. Like their whole motto, their whole just kind of aura of their company is serve. Like we build relationships, right? So not seeing people as just a customer, but how do we partner? How do we build a relationship and actually walk people through building? Because that can be one of the most stressful
Yeah.
things people can walk through in their lifetime. Probably one of the biggest purchases and things they're going to do.
Absolutely.
Right? So I read, and at the time, I'm doing more civil construction, so running excavators, building roads, and I see they have a civil division. And so I'm like, you know what? I'm going to apply. I see Rogers Group's local, Jay Cumbie, some of these bigger civil construction companies within Cookeville. So I'm like, regardless, I think there's something here. And so that night I email them and just to kind of find out some information.
Yeah.
Well, that was a Sunday night. Monday, Lindsay comes into our room, 5 a.m., because she would train people in our garage. And she's like, Tim, wake up. They emailed you back. They want to meet with you. And I'm like, what? Like,
that's an insane turnaround.
Right?
That is an insane turnaround.
So they're, because of the time change, right? And the time difference, they had gotten there, saw my inquiry and emailed me. And so I'm like, okay, like, let me get up. Let me figure this out. So that day I go to work and I'm kind of, looking for people. I get on the phone and trying to orchestrate, hey, when I can meet. So this company is doing 410s. So they don't work on a Friday. We fly in on a Wednesday.
Okay.
Right? So 3 days before, we're in this time period. And so sure enough, I'm able to fly in Tuesday, rush to Cookeville because we have Wednesday to meet. And so I'm just thinking like, all right, Lord, like, and at this point, right, like God is just clearly in everything.
Yeah.
From the airfare to the timing, what he's telling me to do, right? I'm just like walking by faith at this point,
Absolutely.
Right? And so we fly in, we land, we rush to Cookeville, and I meet with the HR lady. And all my jobs previously were family-owned business, so I knew the people. I really never had an interview. So this was kind of strange, let alone I'm in a completely different state, right? I don't know how they do things here. I don't know anything. Feel like I don't know anything. And so I sit down with her and she's like, all right, so just, tell me about your experience, what you know, what you want to do, blah, blah, right? And for some reason, I talk all about my residential construction. Knowing good and well, this is a commercial company. So up until then, they had built a few custom homes, but majority of their work is big commercial. And, so I get, and this is quick. Like I'm telling you, it felt like 10 minutes. And we got to get to the end and I'm like, okay, like, so what jobs do you even have available? Like, and she's like, well, I don't really know. And I'm like, okay. She's like, usually the owners
here for an interview, not knowing.
Right. Okay. She's like, we just like to meet good people and like usually the owners are here. They know more of that stuff. We kind of set up an initial interview with me. If I think, the person's good, we'll push you on to the next interview. And I'm thinking like, okay, well, I'm in town for like 4 days. Can we hurry this process up,
Right.
And knowing that like there's only tomorrow. And so I'm just kind of like, you know what, like up until this point, what do I have to lose? God's been in control. I'm not worried about it.
Yeah.
And so we go downstairs and I'm about to push, through the door and she's, I'm kind of asking, hey, where's some good places to eat? Just creating small talk. And she sees the owner's truck and she says, hey, that's the owner's truck. Like if his truck's here, he's here. And, so I'm kind of like, okay, like you want to check? And she's like, yeah, let me check if he's here. And so I'm like, okay, Lord, right on time. So I come back into kind of the foyer area where I sit down on a couch, and I remember just saying, Lord, if this is where you want me, if this is your plan and this is where you want our family, give me this opportunity. And so the office kind of has like an internal circle where there's an upstairs and a downstairs, and there's a back stairway that you can go through. And I see this lady taking laps. It's like I see her poke her head out, go back, poke her head out, and it's like she's, chasing a mouse. And finally she pokes her head through and she says, hey, they're here. They want to meet you. And so I'm like, if this cannot be any more real, I don't know what is.
Yeah.
Right? And so I walk back in there And at this point, I'm pretty emotional. And I remember sitting in that chair. It's a father and son. And I just said, before you ask any questions, can I just explain the story of how I'm even here, how I even got here, and what God is doing in my life? And they said, yeah, we'd love to hear that. And so I get a little emotional, and I pretty much explain kind of what I just shared with you, the whole story from asking God for time to how I'm sitting in this chair. And the son is just smiling ear to ear, looking at his dad. And he says, we prayed 2 weeks ago that if God wanted us to start a residential division, that God would send somebody. And we feel like you're that person. And man, I just lost it. I just said, I'm that person. It felt so right. There was so much peace to just know where I was a year prior.
Yeah.
You just can't make that stuff up. And so they were just totally thrown back right now. I don't think anybody thought one interview, one trip, not just a job, but literally start a whole division for a company. So they wanted to expand. And so he's kind of like, hey, look, we're going to need some time. We've not thought this through. We're just being led by the Lord and whatever he has. And I said, hey, no problem. I got to go back and tell my bosses. I got to try and sell my house. Like, I'm in no place to just move tomorrow. And so it just worked out so well where, we said, okay, like, send the offer. We'll kind of work through some stuff. I'll go back home. I'll see where we're at. I need to finish some projects back home, get our house on the market, sell it, and be ready to move my family across the country. And man, I just remember just the feeling of, I get out of that room and I call Lindsay and she's kind of like, what's going on? Like, that was quick. Everything okay? And I'm like, we're moving. Like, God made a way. And we just drove around Cookeville the rest of that time and just prayed and just said, Lord, whatever you have for us and for our family, we're available. We say yes. And so really from there, that's the story of the new re-encounter, the new Tim that I am today, is being completely re-identified. Whenever God shifts you, he's going to re-identify. He never leaves the person the same as he's transitioning. And we see that through scripture, right? Abram to Abraham is a shift. He can't bring the old name, the old mindsets into a new place. And those last few months, that's really the commitment that I wanted to make with God, is there's no power in just moving place. It's the power of what you're doing and how you're re-identifying me, because I can bring the old things here. Absolutely. And think that it's going to be great.
Yeah.
And so it's still a process. I'm not going to lie. There's still things I can still feel that want to come. And so to talk a little bit about that, we move here and I had no idea how to start a whole division, a whole really brand of a company.
Yeah.
They happen to call it Evergreen, which I'm from Washington.
Okay.
Right. We based off of scripture in Isaiah, come all you are thirsty. And I fell into that trap so quickly. So I commit to God, like, Lord, get this out of me. And sure enough, within months, I'm working a lot.
Yeah.
I'm trying to hold the weight of like, all right, Lord, you gave this to me and I'm simply supposed to steward it. But without any guidance, without any opposition, nothing is just going to transform overnight and be perfect.
Right.
Right. And so that was amazing to see, like, God prepare me, but like you still have to walk through it. I think that's very hard for people to understand.
Yeah.
Because I think they think, all right, encounter with God, everything's going to be great. I've encountered him. He's amazing. Let's rock and roll.
Yeah.
But what I tell you guys, right, as young adults, is the enemy will always come after the last thing that you heard.
Absolutely.
And so obviously he heard that, right? Don't bring familiar. So what's he going to put in front of me? Familiar things.
Yeah.
And it was hard. It was hard to try and build community at this point, right? Because we don't know anybody.
Yeah.
And so we went to a bigger local church here and, kind of got our feet wet. We loved their kids program. And that was my first priority, is like, okay, how can I make sure that the kids transition is better? I'm an adult.
Yeah.
I can figure it out. I'm going to be preoccupied with work, but how do I replant my family and get them connected? Because we homeschool.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And so we're there for about a year, and I hire a guy, and all of a sudden I remember seeing the Bend popped up and thinking like, the Bend. I'm feeling another shift. This is within a year of us being here. And so I tell this coworker, I'm like, hey dude, what are you doing on Sunday? You should go check out this church. And so I send him over there because I happen to be speaking in the children's area where we were going to church. And I remember being so excited for Monday, and he comes in, he's like, dude, you got to go check out the Bend. And I'm like, really? That awesome? So we end up going and visiting, and our first night at the Bend is their vision night. And they were meeting at the Duck Pond Manor, and they were sharing like what God had done, some property things where they were looking to buy that property on North Maple, and just kind of what God was doing. And so, man, just instantly just fell in love with the worship. Felt a little bit more at home with that spirit-filled atmosphere.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was pretty obvious what God was doing. At the same time, Lindsay is pregnant with Mateo. So we had 3 kids when we moved, and we're kind of getting to that age where it's like, hey, you want to have another one? Like, what are we going to do here? And we decided, because I wanted 2 boys.
Yeah.
And, we had 2 girls. We had Mia and Jordan. And Jordan, if anybody knows Jordan, she's a handful. But I felt like God was kind of fulfilling a promise. And just the way he was working, I felt so confident of like, God's going to give me a son. And so we named him Mateo, which is Matthew, which is gift from God. And so I think just planting a seed in the new season and reaping the full promise that God had given us, he's very significant in all that and very special to me, right? So if my whole thing was to redeem time, what better way than to give me a son that I can actually be present in his life?
Yeah.
And so it's been amazing to see the reconnection for me between me and Bentley, our oldest son, and me and Jordan, all of them really. But there's something special between my oldest son and my youngest son, and watching them two, because it honestly took me back to like me in my childhood. My dad's at war, me having to take care of my brother.
Yeah.
And so full circle, pretty cool stuff of just what God's doing there. And so let me fast forward a little bit again. So I'm trying to work through not getting sucked back into working all the time. We're at a new church in a new season. God is kind of, again, stoking that fire. And I'm reminded of just like the calling to ministry. And so when we transitioned to the Bend, they had a youth pastor position open. And so if I'm being very honest and authentic and transparent, I made that shift thinking I could be the youth pastor. Now, God always has different plans. And I'm so thankful that he did not give me that position, because it would have crushed me in that season.
Yeah.
Trying to balance work, trying to redeem time in my family, and be a youth pastor in a growing church, there would have been no way.
Yeah.
So instead, we help. And that's the first place we get connected. We become leaders under Marcus and Alicia, and amazing. Just get to help foundationally build that. We begin to help in children's, and then they're starting Gravity, so that they started the campus ministry.
Yeah.
Pastor Steve was starting young adults. So again, what is the enemy going to do? He's going to bring familiar. So now we're like running and gunning all these things
Wide open.
while having a newborn baby.
Yeah.
And so again, it was going to crush me. So I hear the Lord, hey, you got to slow down and you got to stay planted with me. Like, I'm going to walk you through this, but you got to yield to grace.
Yeah.
And so this became my message, right? Of, Lord, teach me how to learn how to yield to grace. And so he shifts things, right? And the church is having to, bounce around. And when we were at Derryberry, I was helping on set up and tear down.
Yeah.
Lindsay was helping in kids. We were helping in youth and going to young adults. It was too much. And I remember sitting at a meeting with Steve and Susan for Gravity, and just kind of, that was my first time that I said, hey, I'd love to help, and we'd love to help in any capacity, but I cannot commit to that. And from there, it just kind of, I had to like take some steps back. And so we kind of just reset. We fall into some things, and the whole time God is beginning to shift business. Like, I got to get the work thing figured out.
Yeah.
And so through that, God says, what I want you to do is just create something organic and authentic for you, and watch me heal you through you doing it my way.
Wow.
And so I'd always longed to like mentor, to father,
Yeah.
right? But I knew in that moment, you can't pour from an empty cup.
Right.
You can't give something that you don't really have. And so the Lord brings me a father in the faith and some mentors, some people that I can get connected to and really press into my own walk again. Because we got to remember, this whole thing is a little new in the sense of, what does it mean to walk with God? I knew what it meant to go to church. I knew how to operate in the gifts and what can kind of seem as the facade of things, but there was no depth. There was no realness to my relationship. And so I get a father, and then from there, it becomes to just birth something so organic. And we reach out to some young adults and we say, hey, what do you think about just coming over? We're going to do worship, and we're going to ask really a simple question. What's the Lord speaking to you? And that is how our young adult group kind of started. And we were doing that for, I can't remember. I want to say 4 to 6 months, somewhere in there. And things have kind of leveled out with the building stuff. We're meeting at the Baptist church in the afternoons, and Steve and Susan have to step down from Gravity.
Yeah.
He gets called to an amazing job, amazing opportunity, and there's a shift there. And so I remember just praying, Lord, like, what we're doing is amazing, and I never want to go before you. But you could feel like some momentum. And even like the foundational things that Steve and Susan did, he would always talk about this harvest that was going to come to Tennessee Tech and in this area for the next generation. And something just always aligned in my spirit with that. So I remember reaching out to Pastor Shane and just saying, hey, I'd like to talk to you. And so we sit down and I just say, hey, this is what we're doing. Like, sorry, not sorry, but like, this is what God gave us. This is the organic thing that we've created. But like, if we can, walk us through how we can unite this, and we'll bring this here. And from there, it's to where we are now. But man, he opened that door. He sat with me and really just began to teach me the things that were missing, those last pieces that really allow you to know how to steward what God has given. Know how to be firm, not prideful, but like have this sense of confidence, this unrestrained boldness to walk into ministry, and how it doesn't have to look how it always has, but the keys to stay focused on. And so we end up, bringing it. He introduced us one night as the young adult pastors, and we just began to plan things. We began to reach out. Because I remember, like, as a young adult myself, I'm 34 now, but feeling somewhat young still. Where are the young people in our church?
Yeah.
And so from there, we're able to bring, the kids that were coming to our house, because a lot of them didn't go to the Bend. They're from different churches. We were just trying to like bring people to encounter God, the presence, and just teach them how to walk what God has for them. And so from there, that's kind of where we're at. Just being able to walk in this position. God's given us a business this year. I went out on my own. So just, God never stops. He's always working and he's always flowing. Sometimes it's us stepping in and out, and how far are you willing to walk? Are you still knee deep and need to go waist deep? He's always testing our character, and he's always willing to allow you to walk in that realm of faith and how to trust him. And so here we are now where, I got amazing people around me, some sons that I'm trying to raise up in the faith and just walk with, and now be able to actually pour out from a confident place of like, no, this is who I know God is and who he wants to be in your life. And if you're able to just humble yourself and be willing to walk in order, we talk about that all the time. Your time will come. Are you willing to burn your plows and follow and sit under somebody and just learn all the things you need to and not try and go ahead of God? That becomes my message, the message of re-identification. Know who you are in Christ and allow him to just be everything. So I know that's a lot, but that's the story. That's where God has brought me and how I've encountered him.
That's awesome. There was a lot in there that I hadn't even heard before. So I'm kind of just taking all that in.
Sure.
At the same time. Just to see God's timing and the way that he's worked on so many moving parts just in your life, and then also to see it from my end, where like I've seen kind of those moving parts come together from a distance.
Yeah.
And then but also like within our relationship, where like you were going through this season where God was teaching you those things, and then God was in a season where he was preparing me to be able to step into this relationship. Mm-hmm. Because like the story of like how you and I got really plugged in is kind of its own like little testimony. Because I was at a place where like I was just coming off of that like re-encountering God, trying to get my life back together, and I'd done a fantastic job of burning a lot of bridges in a lot of ways, and because Satan is just so helpful, he'd added to that in his own measure, and so I remember like being there on the Sunday when Pastor Shane announced that you and Lindsay were taking over young adults. And I'm like, okay, I know that I need to be plugged in. And I understand what's circulating right now. It's like, okay, it's going to suck. I'm going to have to sit down with this guy. I'm going to have to be like, all right, look. And I think I've told you this before. Like at best, the best thing that I was hoping for to come out of us having that meeting is just that you would not immediately dislike me. What's up, guys? That's the end of this episode. Hope you guys come back and join us for part 2. Tim and his wife have a podcast called the Tolo Pod. You guys can check that out here. Go ahead and interact with our social medias. Follow us, drop a like, drop a comment, subscribe to the YouTube channel. It's all down here somewhere. And until then, we'll see you guys in the next episode.